Okay, everyone, and welcome to this month's Code Harbour. Way! Thank you everyone for coming. So we are going to kick off with KCS's brand manager, Lily Dedman, who's going to be talking to us about Access Denied, the Disabled Guide to Accessibility Online. I actually saw her give this talk some point last year. It was absolutely amazing. I think you're all gonna love it. So take it away.
Hello. His name is Potato, if anyone was wondering. The cat. I'm going to assume that everyone's laughing hilariously at me now. Cool. So today I'm going to be talking about accessibility online. So just to start off with, I'm just going to quickly define accessibility because a lot of people use it in different ways. So for me, accessibility is solely to do with disabled people, so whether or not they can actually use your website or your app or whatever it is that you put out there. This can also be applied to physical accessibility, so ramps and lifts and kind of that kind of thing. A lot of people are just like, oh yeah, you can access our stuff here, and actually it's not accessible to disabled people. So when I'm talking about accessibility, that's what I'm talking about. So I'm just going to quickly start off about me, why you should be listening to me. So I am myself disabled. I'm deaf. You can't see it because I've got a fabulous wig on today, but I am deaf and I have hearing aids. I also have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which causes chronic pain, as well as fibromyalgia, which I think more people are familiar with. And also have, like most people, mental health problems and that kind of thing. So I am definitely well versed in disability and in accessibility. I'm also, in my free time / freelancing stuff, I do accessibility audits for companies. So recently I've done audits for the NHS because there's been recently a new law saying that all public sectors have to have their websites be accessible to a certain standard by September last year. Not very many places have been very successful at this, but that is what I am here to do, is to try and help them think about it and trying to reframe the way that you look at websites and accessibility, so then it's easier for you to understand what you're looking for and what you're doing. I'm also quite big, well, I'm personally not quite big, but I'm a big advocate in the disabled community. So I like to follow lots of really popular people, and I also I've got friends who are disabled, so I'm not only coming from my own perspective, but I'm coming from what I've learned from other people. I've just realized I forgot to say one of my disabilities. I'm also autistic, but yeah, I keep getting new ones every day, so I have to remember my entire list. But yes, lots of disabilities and very qualified. So a lot of times when I talk about these things in networking events and kind of stuff like that, there's a lot of quite ignorant comments that I get, but I kind of understand where people are coming from. So when people talk about, you know, disabled people don't have money, who cares, why do we have to be so PC? It's not really about being PC. It's not about kind of taking money off disabled people. It's about making sure that your product or your service is available to everybody. So there are 14.1 million disabled people in the UK alone. So that is 20% of our population. So when you say, oh, yeah, but disabled people don't have money, some disabled people definitely have money. And I think when people think about disabled people, they think about old people or people who are kind of not necessarily able to do things like, you know, so for instance, I have a car. I want to buy a car. I used to work for an agency and we did kind of accessibility stuff for drivers, and I made sure to include some visually impaired stuff, so making sure that the websites were accessible for blind people. That doesn't mean I'm expecting a blind person to get behind the wheel and start driving the car. It means that I'm expecting blind people or people who are dyslexic or people who are just cooking and busy and just put a screen reader on, or people who have many other reasons why they might be using screen readers and any other access tools. I'm expecting them to be using these things so then they can learn more about cars, and then maybe they have the money and they're getting their kid a car, you know. So when you're talking about, oh, why should we even bother, these people aren't going to want my product, that's not necessarily true. And when you try and make sure that things are accessible, it makes it accessible to everybody. I mean, that's just given. But yeah, it does cost a lot of money if you haven't made your website or your product accessible from the beginning. So when you retroactively try and add in accessibility, it can get very difficult very quickly and very expensive. So I would like to show you my favorite website in the entire world because it's hilarious. So this is Yvette's Bridal Formal. Some people will have seen this before because it goes on Reddit quite a lot. So this website is obviously extremely inaccessible. It's not accessible to anybody, even if you have no disabilities. But I think it's a very good visual representation of what you are seeing when you're using a screen reader or you're trying to use something as a disabled person. You don't know what to focus on, you don't know what to do, like how are you supposed to use this website, what you're supposed to buy, what is the call to action, how is it gives everybody a headache, and anybody who works in anything to do with websites is going to cry. So what I also would like to do is show you. Now, I did subtitle this myself, and as a deaf person, I'm not entirely sure I got it all right, but I used a screen reader on this, and I wanted to show you what it was like to use a website like this. So where you might have a really sleek and cool front, but you won't be able to actually use the website itself. So this is what it sounds like. Now, for a fun little game, try and guess where you are on the page.
You need to share sound as well, so we can't hear that.
Oh, I don't know how to do that. What do you want me to do?
I'm having a look now. There is a way of sharing sound, but I don't remember how to do it.
I know how to do it, Lily. Lily, if you unshare and reshare again before you, when you're presented with the windows that you want to share, there's a little checkbox just down in the left-hand corner that says Share Sound. If you click that one.
Oh yeah, I see it now. Okay. Prepare to be amazed.
Link. Why? Our designers tilde asterisk. Link. Point click. Link. Here to. Link. See. Link.
So I'm not going to bore you with that any longer, but you can see how impossible it is for you to, even as a sighted, I'm assuming everybody's sighted, sorry if you're not, but as a sighted and hearing, or again, assuming everyone's hearing, I am not, but yeah, person, it's impossible to even know where you are on the website, what you're supposed to do, where even the links go. So I think this is what it's like when you're using a screen reader on websites that aren't properly accessible. Okay, so how do you make it accessible? So I'm going to give you a little bit more than what's on this slide because I feel like it's kind of very vague. So you have to make sure that your headers are fine, which is the same with SEO. You have to make sure that your headers are in the right order, that everything, you've got your H1s at the top and then your titles, your H2s secondary, and then your paragraphs. See a lot of people using the headers as kind of like styling points. So there'll be like a H2, then an H6, then an H4, and that's just because some of the fonts are bigger than others. Don't do that, just use the formatting and then maybe change the styling afterwards if it's not correctly done. Also, don't forget that if you've got invisible links or there's stuff going on in the background that you don't necessarily want people to see, your screen reader or people who are using keyboard only, so they'll be tabbing through your website, so they'll be highlighting every single link that you've got. They'll find the strange little links that you have in the corners. I found that on quite a few websites. So if you're just tabbing through, you end up going getting stuck in the footer, so making sure that you haven't got any loops going on. So if you just use your website as you imagine your user should be using it, so for instance, if you're going on a shopping website, you might want to go on an e-commerce site, go on your about page, go on a product, make sure that you can see everything that's on there, and then trying to go to your basket and then check out without using your mouse at all. If you can't do that on your website, then that means that a person who maybe has poor motor control, so they might be really shaky when they're using a mouse, but they can use a tab button, or they might use it for different reasons. they won't be able to check out, and that means that you've lost a purchase. We also find that if you're using social media, so LinkedIn, for instance, is incredibly inaccessible to blind people. So I've got a friend who's visually impaired, and I've tried to get him on LinkedIn, but he can't use it at all because it doesn't do anything right. You can't navigate it properly, and it just ends up being a platform where he chooses not to go onto, even though it'd be hugely beneficial to him for his work and his freelancing and stuff, but he can't do it. So he has to rely on people to find him on Twitter, because that's way more accessible. So you also have to kind of understand that people aren't just going to try keep on doing it. And you also have to remember that during this pandemic especially, a lot of people don't have others to help them. So for instance, today I booked my car's MOT, which is fun, and the companies that just told me just to call them up for a quote, I had to ignore them because I can't call people up because I can't hear them, because I predominantly lip read. So that's why I can cope over video chat, but I can't do it on a phone call. And I'm not very good with accents, so if I'm calling somebody, I'm not going to know if they've got a different accent to me, or if I'm not going to be able to understand them, or if they're going to have a noisy background or whatever. So it's a lot easier for me to fill out the form or to use the click through and just go, yep, I want it on this day, I want this happening. So you have to understand what your customer is feeling and thinking, and it's the little things that make people go, oh, I'm not using you. I went all the way through an entire process, putting my car details in, putting the mileage in, putting my details in, almost put in my car details, and they said, oh, we'll call you to confirm the time. And I was like, you can't do that. I can't have you calling me because I will instantly reject your call, and then you'll never see me again. So this is kind of how it works from my perspective as a deaf person, and from the perspective of a blind person. There's also other people who, might use magnification on their websites, and so they might zoom in. So if your website if you zoom in a little bit and you then have to scroll from side to side forever, that's inaccessible, and people just don't have the attention span anymore to try and make things work. They'll just leave and go to your competitor. So that is kind of why it's so important. And it might not just be for all disabled people. It might be that, somebody's had laser eye surgery and might just need to see something but is still recovering, and then they can't access your website. And then, but they're functionally abled, they're not disabled, but they can't use it. So you have to kind of consider what it's like and who you're targeting. So, I'm a 23-year-old woman, I live on my own, I've got a cat, so anything could be targeted towards me. I'm a very generic person. Most people are targeted towards, this kind of the working demographic. And there's a lot of places that still aren't accessible. So that is why you need to kind of keep pushing, especially during the times of the pandemic where people are alone and kind of struggling. So design all your projects with accessibility in mind, much like you would with SEO and your user experience and your design. It just has to be in there. So when you're creating your website, whether it's from an existing CRM or just, you make it yourself, just make sure that you're including it, making sure that you go, can we actually read what this says? Because there's so many websites that have like really light grey on a cream background and with really, really tiny text. And that's impossible even for me to read. And I'm only short-sighted, but, I have no disability there. And I give up halfway through, and I'm sure you've all seen it. Also, hire disabled people. No one is going to know whether something is accessible unless they're already disabled and already use it in their everyday lives. There's only so much that you can learn yourself without having to go to a disabled person. And I will admit, I don't know everything, obviously, because I've not got all of the disabilities in the world. So I do have to consult my disabled friends and go, is this inaccessible? Is this accessible? What are you expecting? So, for instance, I was talking to my friend today, and he's been applying for PhDs at all the universities, and you would think that universities, being public sector, should already be all accessible because that was the law in September last year. None of them were. The only university that was accessible to him for he could fill out the form by himself as a visually impaired person was Singapore University in Australia. No, Melbourne University in Australia. So it's kind of, if that's the only place that was accessible to him, he could have only applied there if he didn't have any support. Fortunately, he does have support and I've been helping him, but I shouldn't have to help him. He should be able to be solely independent and apply to his own degree by himself. He's intelligent enough to go and do a PhD. Why is he not able to then use a website? You can use Chrome extensions. So I've listed a few that I use sometimes just to show what disability is like and to make sure that it's all good. There are way more. I haven't uncovered them all, but yeah, just use some extensions, see what it's like, just have a play around. I've got my partner to use Wave, which is brilliant because he's done it on his own website, which I did build for him. But and it's really interesting to see what is wrong with websites and to go, oh, okay, that's really interesting. I'm not a developer. I have no idea how you'd fix them, but it's quite interesting to see what's wrong. You can also use a screen reader. The free one that a lot of visually impaired people use is NVDA. That was developed by a visually impaired person for visually impaired people, so it is really good. And you can see the limitations of it immediately. So that is something that I use when I do my audits. I also create a checklist for every website. So if you're working on lots of different projects, then it's quite, you know, you probably have your standard checklist for everything anyway. So before you deploy stuff or before you put stuff out there, just add this in. You know, it's very easy. If you just Google it, there's lots of other people who put their checklists up there. You know, and you can always look at the web content accessibility guidelines, which are created by the W3 people, and that has all of the information you'll ever need ever. It is very overwhelming though, so you can kind of take it back a step and look at blogs and articles around it and then go back to the guidelines and just kind of see what it is that you're lacking in yours. And some really basic things that I would like you to do as a deaf person is to always include subtitles. If you're recording something like a video, it's quite easy to do your own subtitles on videos. Most video editing software has it. I've done it for videos myself, so I do know how easy it is to do. You can also do transcripts. If you can't quite get the timings right and it's annoying you so much, you can just go, right, I've uploaded it to Word, just read it, because I read a lot faster than people talk. And if you're posting images on anywhere like social media or on your website, just make sure you use image descriptions. So kind of you think about what's important in this image, why you're sharing it, try and limit the amount of text that's in your image, and just kind of see what it is that you're using. Why have you put that in? If it's purely decorative, then just mark it as decorative, don't worry about it. But if it's actually informational or is an infographic or something, then think about how you would make that information available to a visually impaired person or somebody who doesn't have necessarily the energy or the brain space to be able to read an infographic. Okay. So a lot of people also ask me, say, look, this is all well and good, Lily, but how am I going to get clients to say yes to having their stuff accessible? So I actually had to do this as a pitch to my last employers. I worked for an agency. So I think one of the things is, if you're already doing SEO for your clients, or you're freelancing or for yourselves, I don't know, good SEO includes good best practice accessibility. So most of it you should already be doing, and if you're not, then that's something obviously you can improve upon. It's quite good to inform people that, because people assume it's only old people who are disabled, to kind of go, you know, 22% of the population is disabled. You are neglecting 1 in 5 people in this country, or, you know, maybe research the stats in any other country that you might be selling to. An increasing aging population also means that there are more people who are gaining disabilities. So, you know, with visual impairments, with hearing loss, with mobility issues and tremors, you've probably all seen this happen to your parents and grandparents. And the thing is that when you know somebody with a disability, it's a lot easier to start caring and going, oh, how do we do this? So a lot of people buy iPads for their elderly relatives. They try and have Alexas and what's the other one, Google Homes and stuff, just to try and make it so then they can kind of feel less lonely, and they can manage their and keep maintaining their independence until they absolutely have to go somewhere where they're looked after. But the thing is they all, most of them, have quite a lot of money, So you're not targeting people who are poor, although the majority of the disabled population is in poverty, but you are also targeting people who will be using these things, or you'll be targeting their families who will be purchasing these things for their relatives. So I actually did this talk 6 months ago, and I was hoping that I could take out the especially during the pandemic line now, but unfortunately cannot. So more people than ever using the internet for e-commerce. I'm sure all of you have had many Amazon packages come. And you know, we're using Zoom right now for our networking, and it's amazing because we can use Rev, and I can see my subtitles going badly. But yeah, so that means it's more accessible for people like me, who then don't have to concentrate so hard, and I can just kind of join in with everybody else. Otherwise, you know, I live on my own, so I'd be even more lonely, become even more of a cat lady. And then obviously, as with everything, if you invest more, then you tend to see more back. But if you make something accessible, you don't have to make it accessible again and again. It just is accessible. So it's not like you make your website all accessible and then in 5 years' time it's inaccessible again. It will retain its accessibility as long as you keep ensuring that all future pages are also accessible. So here are some resources. I think I've already mentioned most of these, but just kind of Google it, making sure that you're understanding. One of the really important things is that if you're hiring somebody else to do this for you, making sure that they either are disabled or have extensive knowledge of disabled people, because there's a lot of people who try to profit off disabled people. You'll know this because they will say with people with disabilities instead of disabled people. So the difference between those is that people who are disabled prefer identity first language, which is I am disabled, I am autistic, I am deaf, whereas people who are able tend to think it's more respectful to disabled people to call them people with disabilities or people with deafness or people with autism. But unfortunately, I can't just drop my disabilities on the ground and just leave them behind. They are with me forever. So I am a disabled person, and that is not something to be ashamed of. So it's a really key thing, but it's also quite a good way of monitoring whether or not a company or a freelancer or whoever you're talking to knows about disability and are actually going to make your website accessible, instead of they technically know, but they're not actually going to do those things. Because there's a lot of things in my reports that I have found without looking at the web consortium accessibility guidelines, or I found just through being disabled and being around disabled people. And that is just something that personal experience gives you. You also should be incorporating other disabled people in your lives. There's probably a lot of people around you that you don't even know that are disabled or don't identify themselves as disabled. Just kind of, you know, uplift that. Make sure that you follow the right people. Make sure that you're, I mean, I don't mean follow them on street. I mean like on Twitter or other social medias, and just kind of understand how big of an impact it makes on their everyday life. So in my team at work, we have me, who has all of the disabilities in the world, and then we've also got somebody who's dyslexic, we've got other people who have migraines, we've got so most of our team are actually disabled, but most of them wouldn't identify themselves as disabled, whereas I would, because I understand, you know, disability, and don't think it's a bad thing, whereas obviously society says it is. So that's just one more thing. And finally, yeah, add me, please add me, guys, like and subscribe. But yeah, any questions, let me know.
Sorry, that really made me laugh. That really made me laugh. Thank you so much, Lily.
All right.
I'd like to start actually by asking a question, if that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably, I should probably ask it at the end. You'll understand why, but I'll ask it now. So after your talk, I saw this talk 6 months ago, I think.
Yeah.
And as a result, I downloaded Axe, I went through my website, I did it all. And then obviously I started having conversations with my clients. And the only issue I found was the thing about contrasting the colours.
Yeah.
So often I come in and I'm asked to develop, not to design. So I was able to do everything but that. And I just wondered, how do you think I could have that conversation with clients to say, your website's great, or your not your color scheme, what's the word, your branding's good, but it isn't, the contrast doesn't make it as accessible. How would you have that conversation with somebody? Or is that not really my place?
No, you definitely can. So there are tools to, you probably know this, but there are tools to like show exactly what the ratio of your contrast is. So if you do contrast checker in Google, you'll find that. And I found that really helpful. The one thing is with logos, they don't have to be accessible, because you can just tag them as logo. But the rest of it, it can be just oh yeah, but have you, you can't actually see this properly, and it may be kind of, I don't know if you've seen, I think it was the coffee one, I can't remember what it's quite called, but that one shows you exactly what it looks like when you have so if you kind of Google stuff like red, green, colorblind, I think that's the most common one, and it's kind of like going, look what it looks like through these people's eyes, and then you kind of go, so it's the majority of people who are red, green, colorblind are men, and it's kind of like, that's quite an interesting thing to throw out there and be like, I know my stuff. But yeah.
Thank you. I will definitely have to bear that in mind. We've got a few questions in the chat, so I'm going to, Karen, do you mind if I ask it, or did you want to?
Sorry, I'm happy to ask. I'm happy to ask if that's okay.
Yeah.
So, Lily, thank you. That was a really, really interesting talk. I really, really enjoyed that, and it's really, really, really useful. My question was about support, and I was a bit horrified then when you talked about people wanting to identify yourself as disabled rather than with a disability, because I then went and read my question. It said people with disabilities, so I apologise. My question was about what support is out there to kind of help. You mentioned about hiring people. If you want to check for accessibility, hire somebody with a disability. What support is out there for people to help get people into these roles, to make sure that there are more people available on or aware of one to make sure that there are more people who are aware that this is a good role. This is a role that, as a disabled person, you might be interested in taking, and also to make more companies aware that maybe they should be looking to hire more disabled people.
That is a very good question. I personally have only just got my jobs through like being amazing, but I'm sure I've seen charities that do kind of like mentoring disabled people. So and I've definitely seen articles on LinkedIn saying that more people should be hiring autistic people. So whoop to everyone in here. As you can see in the chat, there's a lot of people who are in developing and technology who are autistic. That kind of goes hand in hand, I feel. But I think it's kind of, rather than trying to aim it at disabled people, because obviously that positive discrimination is still illegal, there could be ways of wording your advert that is kind of like, we are kind of aware, we have these provisions in place for these kinds of disabilities, let us know. There's also the government scheme that says that you're basically disability friendly, so if people pass your first round of kind of quizzes or questions or whatever, then they'll be guaranteed an interview. So I think, I'm not quite sure what it's called, but I've definitely done that a few times. The only problem is that a lot of people are scared to disclose that they're disabled because of the stigma and the kind of stuff. So I'm quite open with it because it's kind of part of my personal brand, but that's only because I can pass as able, so I have that kind of privilege there, whereas some people who may be more obviously disabled might be worried about doing that kind of thing. So it's kind of just going, how can I make sure that your well-being and stuff is kind of thought about during the interview process and being onboarded. So one of the brands I manage is a recruitment company, and I've put in like little bits that kind of I would pick up as a disabled person, but it's kind of like, give us a message if anything is inaccessible, call us, text us, message us, kind of these millions of types of communication with us, and we're happy to respond to you in any way that you want. These are kind of, if you need any support, then just let us know, that kind of thing. But also kind of making sure that you say what support you have already to begin with, because I sit there and I'm just there like, well, I could ask you for the world. I can be like, can you give me new hearing aids? But you're not going to do that. But you might be like, okay, instead, can we do video chats instead of phone calls? Can we email instead of phone calls? You know, that kind of thing. So it's kind of acknowledging that disabled people exist will get you to have hire disabled people, if that makes sense.
Does. Thank you.
To answer your question, because I sometimes
No, that's great. Thank you, and thank you, Alex, for letting me ask.
That's okay. So you actually put 2 questions. Was that answer both of them?
Oh yes, actually the second question was, are there roles available for people? I think you kind of covered it, but what you're talking about, what you're saying about what you do, presumably that's in the wider world. There's space for other people to do that. So how do you find out about those roles? Are they there, I suppose, is the question.
Yeah, most of the people I know are freelancers, so you kind of already have to be in, and it's kind of word of mouth. There is, I feel like I'm dobbing them in now, but there is Ben and George. One of them works at the University of Kent, one of them works for the Home Office, and they have started their own company doing this kind of thing. So they do kind of like talks on accessibility, they do audits and stuff like, and they will hire like outsource to me and Paul George if they've got stuff that needs an actual disabled person looking at it. Mm-hmm. So if you message me on LinkedIn, I can get you their contact details if you're interested or just want to share it. But yeah, there's definitely places. It's just very niche at the moment. So
okay,
hopefully in a year's time I'll be like, so yeah, I have my own agency and this is what I do, so hire me.
Thank you.
It's all right.
Just want to say on that, could you actually put those links in the chat? Because I might also need to contact them. I'm working on something to do with young people, and I know accessibility could be an issue, so that might be something I could do with as well, if that's okay.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you. Steve,
and you can always ask about me as well, though. Just make sure that I get it. Yeah.
Of course.
Okay,
Steve, you've asked a question. Do you want to ask it yourself, or do you want me to just read it out?
Yeah, happy to ask it myself. So I've seen more engineering teams using the inbuilt Google Lighthouse, inbuilt in Chrome, the Lighthouse tooling that gives you a score for accessibility. And I'm just wondering, how accurate and how comprehensive that is, or is it possible to have 100% score for accessibility in Lighthouse, but actually have an entirely inaccessible website?
Okay, so I couldn't hear you, but I can read the question, so that's good. But so it is very possible to have 100% accessibility in all of the kind of like back end things, and for it to be visually awful. So yes, is the short answer. The long answer is it's a very we use a bit of both usually. So I will use tools to kind of go through and give me the stats and stuff, but I will also go through and look at it. So like how you do, I mean, I'm actually not sure what you do, but when you're doing UX work and you're going through a website and you're basically going, right, this is the customer journey, this is what I expect them to do. That's kind of what I do with the accessibility journey, but I just won't use a mouse. I'll just tab through it. And then sometimes you end up getting a bit, the tool won't see this, but you'll be at a really random page and it'll be like, why am I here? I didn't click on this, I clicked on that, So what you kind of do is you do the basic 100%, yep, we've got there, and then you have to go through it and make sure that they are generally quite good. So they'll pick up your contrast, they'll pick up on your headers, they'll pick up on whether you're in tab loops, they'll pick up on like that kind of thing, but they won't pick up on maybe really strange things that you don't necessarily expect. There's also things like, for instance, it's recommended that your text shouldn't be too complicated. Apparently, and I'm going to dispute this stat, but apparently most of the population has a reading age of a 9-year-old. Now, that doesn't make any sense to me, because surely the population has a reading age of their average age. But also, if you're saying that everybody has a reading age of a 9-year-old, then honestly, I don't understand. But basically what I'm trying to say is that when you're using language, it's really important to kind of ensure that that's accessible as well. So it's not just kind of like how it looks and feels, it's about what exact words that you're using. So if you're using a lot of jargon on something that's like, you know, the beginner's guide to, then that's not necessarily going to work. But then that's kind of like a common sense thing. But you have to remember that there's lots of dyslexic people that exist, and kind of people with ADHD that might not have the attention span and that kind of thing. So it's a lot of things that you have to kind of keep in your head, and that's why my head's so big. It's just like you have to keep it in. But yeah, it's kind of like if you kind of manage to research a little bit about disabilities and how they impact people, and then start looking at things, you're actually really going to be surprised at how much you find that is inaccessible.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question?
Yep.
Awesome.
Thank you. Just quickly, for anyone that's watching this on YouTube, the link that Lily put up, it's allable.co.uk. I believe Lila, am I pronouncing that right? I think that's right.
Leela.
Leela. I knew I was thinking it's Lila or Leela, it's one of the two. I'm so sorry. But you've got a question, don't you?
Yes, I was just building a bit on what Karen said. Once, say you're delivering training or you've got people in the workplace, now that we're in such a digital remote age, is there any good software, for instance, to make things more accessible? So like subtitles on Zoom, things like that. As someone who's deaf in one ear, I know I find things like subtitles like a really necessary thing. So.
Well, I have not yet found a subtitling anything that works well, especially as everybody kind of has like different quality mics and that kind of thing. The one thing that I have started doing in meetings though is going, well, first of all, is this necessary? And secondly, you know, the whole this could be an email thing, that I also try and get people to maybe summarize what they're saying. So if it's like a really long question like Steve just had, I'm so glad it was written there, because I would never have answered it. I've just gone, I don't know. But yeah, so I get them to just summarize what they've said if it's like a long thing, or I just ask them to email me afterwards. I've not found a single way yet, unless you have somebody sitting there actually captioning it for you. But I'm not sure that anyone has a company that's willing to do that for them. Get just a specific person there like typing really fast. So I think, yeah, so
What about other accessibility? For instance, obviously a lot of things are on Zoom, but what if you're like a blind person, for instance?
so blind people can use Zoom. That is, I'm not sure it's totally accessible, but it is, I mean, as long as they can hear what's going on. But I think it's kind of like, so my friend is blind, and he prefers phone calls to texting because he doesn't like hearing his screen reader talk to him, because it's like a robot talking to him. Whereas obviously quite a lot of people read stuff and they read it in their friend's voice instead, or their own head voice, which isn't a robot. So it's kind of just making sure that people are getting their preferences done. So I prefer text-based things because I find it a lot easier for me to read and comprehend and kind of reread, and because sometimes there's a bit of a lag between hearing the words, then processing what the words mean, and then finding an answer and then saying it back out. So you'll see that I stuttered a little bit while I was going too far ahead with my thoughts, and then it just came back. But so you can see how that might be an access issue. There's also things like if somebody, maybe for instance, fairly certain somebody on my team has ADHD and they talk a lot, and that can kind of sometimes get a bit overwhelming, but I also think they get overwhelmed too. So it's kind of like finding a way to kind of go, let's just stick to the topic, here's the agenda, let's so it kind of really depends on the individual person and what they found works for them. So there's a lot of deaf people who would hate this kind of thing, would never do a talk. There's also deaf people like me who are like, it's all good. So I'm not sure that totally answers your question, but it is really individual.
No, good. I feel like just making an effort to make all the possibilities available is what's important.
Yes, yeah, that's exactly it.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to ask a question?
Well, Claire has asked, do I have a really good accessible website? All the ones that I found are really boring looking, so I'm going to so you can look at the WCAG website. That's extremely accessible. It's the most boring website ever to look at though. I don't know if anyone else knows of any, but I haven't found one that's like 100% accessible and looks good, unfortunately.
I actually have a sort of follow-up question to that, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Oh, the Gov website. Just so obviously I said before, after watching your talk last time, I installed Axe and I did all the stuff to it. I had a quick look on my website again, and Axe is now telling me that I've got like 30 different issues with it. Is that quite common for it to, like, is it as it's updating over time? Is that quite common, or have I just broken my website somehow?
No, you're fine. It does update, and as Chrome or whatever browser you use updates, it will update with it. So I don't know if you've noticed, but there's like an accessibility bit at the bottom of your inspect. I'm not a computer person, but Chrome does do an accessibility, like a little tiny accessibility audit. Like it'll tell you if you've got alt text and stuff, but I'm not sure how amazing it is.
Oh yeah.
I think the BBC are good at this, yes. And most news sites are, but it's very basic because it's just image, text, bit of an ad, and then text again, isn't it? So that, I mean, if you haven't made that accessible, then you've done something really wrong.
Karen has another question, but I think she's gone, so I'll read it for her. Do you work with design teams to help them to design accessibility in, rather than dealing with it retrospectively?
I have done, yes. A lot of designers actually already know quite a lot about accessibility, but the problem is that when the client is going, oh no, but I want this, and then the designer's like, it's not accessible though. So I have done this at my last place. I worked directly with designers, and we would sit there and kind of hash it out and go, right, what is the most accessible? And but yeah, there's a lot of, if you subscribe to a lot of, I can still see you, Karen, it's fine. There's a lot of kind of blogs and stuff for designers talking about accessibility. It's a very big thing, actually. I would like to say I started a trend, but it definitely wasn't me. But yes, you can definitely work with designers.
Awesome. I feel like someone else is going to jump out now. Has anyone else got a question?
You can definitely message me. I'm already talking to somebody else about accessibility outside of this, so you know, you're allowed to message me and have calls with me. I mean, I'm in lockdown too, so I've got nothing else to do.
I do put links to all the speakers on the website, so yeah, and there's links on Twitter and stuff as well. Yeah, and I think I've contacted you as well about stuff, so she is great. You can contact and say, help me, does this right?
Of course.
Yep. Okay, so I think we will end it there if that's okay. Thank you. It's really weird doing it on my own. So yeah, we'll pause that now. So oh wow, 45 minutes, wow. That might be a record actually. So we'll pause for 15 minutes and we'll be back on at 8:15 with Steve's talk. All right, so we'll speak to you all in a bit, guys.